Why do major companies like Enron or Steinhoff collapse? The answer often starts with corporate governance. Hi, I'm Justina from Practices Academy, and no, this is not me on the screen. That's Anthony, our experienced ACCA BT tutor, who's going to teach you this 4-part mini-series on corporate governance. First up, what corporate governance really is, agency theory, and what you can learn from real company failures. Over to you, Anthony.
We will be discussing the notion of corporate governance and the issues of social responsibilities of organizations. In the first 2 videos, we will talk about the concept of corporate governance and the issues such as agency and those matters and how they transpire into affecting organizations. In the third video, we'll move on to talking about recommendations and practical steps of implementing corporate governance. And thereafter, we'll do videos which handle the aspect of social responsibility of companies and organizations. So, as the notes refer, the definition offered at the outset of Chapter 1 is to suggest that corporate governance is a system by which organizations are directed and controlled by their senior officers. So the corporate governance system is set in place to ensure that stakeholders, both internal and external, all members of all parties who are interested all interested parties in the companies and organizations are at very least informed and in most instances treated fairly and within the rights of their claims against the company. So a ongoing issue that happens within an organization that arises, as per the conversations we had in earlier videos, of the separation of the physical entity, legal entity of the organization and the shareholders, and the introduction of a third party being the management that operates the company, is the problem of agency. So in the notion that agents act on behalf of a principal, in the instance of an organization or a company, the company stands as an independent organization, an independent legal entity, and people are employed as agents on its behalf. So these agents are then put in place to effect the wishes of the company that are ingrained in their constitutional development and in the documents that found the companies. They're called different things in different companies, founding documents, etc. And the agents that have been employed are empowered to act within a certain scope. The shareholders stand separate from the company, protected by limited liability, but have rights into the company to be protected by both the constitution of the company and also external laws which moderate companies or organizations in different companies. So whilst it's not a direct agency from the employees such as the CEO or CFO on behalf of the shareholder, it is passed through via the interest into the company. So as would happen in smaller companies, the stakeholders, shareholders, are very often the same people that are managing the companies, or there certainly will be a crossover of those roles. And so long as there are not external shareholders into that company, these situations are simpler because the management are actually acting, in a sense, on their own behalf with regards to the ultimate welfare of these shareholders. However, even in small companies, this can be complicated when there is an external party, such as a funder. Now, a funder does not necessarily have voting or operational control over the company and is certainly to stand to loss should the company drive into losses and not be able to repay the loans it's made. So even in small companies, corporate governance notionality does actually arise in that the management activities of the company are related to the well-being of the company. And if there are third parties that are standing as stakeholders into the company and stand to lose, that is an important relationship. In larger organizations, when you have external shareholders and then very often funders standing externally as well, the conflict between your management and the stakeholders and shareholders starts to become more imminent and needs a higher level of control and of transparency. So what has happened in the past is that there have been instances, and there have been several very high-profile companies that are subject to this. One could take the more recent case of Steinhoff, which was a major corporate failure throughout Europe and other countries. In the slightly more distant past, one could consider the Enron company, which suffered in the same way. And what happened in many of these instances is that the management class of the company, so the directorship, and in some instances even the board of directors, so it would be the executives and the non-executive directors, utilized the company in such a way that it did not serve the shareholders to best effect. The motivations for this are very often quite complex, but when shareholders are standing to recover from dividends, their returns from dividends and capital repayment on the winding up of the company, if the directors are more motivated by, for example, bonuses and salaries, which are linked to performance, it's not unusual for the management to manipulate the numbers and to present performance which is different from reality. So in many of these instances, with the concept of the agents acting on behalf of the companies, for example, in the Enron environment, the obligations of the company, the debt obligations, and many of the items that were reducing the net value of the company were held off balance sheet, for example, and not disclosed fully to shareholders and to funders, who were then subject to failure of this company in the short and medium term. So it's a growing field of concern. Laws and behavior within, say, for example, accounting bodies and just on stock exchanges requiring greater level of presentation and of transparency have been put in place to manage these problems that have happened historically. So just to take the notion of agency theory and the conflicts which occur under the agency umbrella, is that we've discussed what the agency concept is, and the agency theory really accepts or suggests that it is likely that an agent who's acting on another person's behalf will stand in a conflicting situation, and that they're looking to manage their own benefit and the benefit of the people who they're acting as an agent on behalf of. Now, that balance and keeping both parties in one's sights of care is where the problem exists. So the modern way of dealing with this is to make suggestion that the agents and the employees and the directors of a company are motivated by the well-being of the company. And this is very often a complicated matter, because does one manage that off the earnings result, or does it manage it off the stock price? In either event, the goal would be to make sure that the manipulation of either earnings, which directly affect stock prices, are not tampered with in any way, so that the agents, being the managing level of a company, are not benefiting on results which are not true to reality, leaving for oncoming failure or disappointment. Now, the concept that we spoke about earlier in some of the videos is also the concept of the fact that directors of a company stand in a fiduciary capacity. And this is similar to the stewardship theory, is that the stewardship theory is really suggesting that not only do you act as an agent, in other words, you're able to and are entitled to and are empowered to take action on behalf of the company in terms of the company constitution, but you stand as a steward. Now, a steward has a slightly different notion to it rather than agent. A steward really is suggesting, along with the word fiduciary, that you have an obligation of care and an obligation to maintain value and to ensure that the overall benefit for all of the parties involved is positive. So this approach, if one starts to talk about stewardship in terms of concept of how directors how managing directors, how staff should be acting with regards to the company. It starts to take the tone, and it sets that this is the tone which would be carried through the corporate governance documentation and implementation, is that the members acting on behalf of a company are stewards of the assets, of the earnings, and of the future of the company, and would be required to behave in this way. So stakeholder theory is a theory which is possibly incorporating more of the notions that we discussed than any of the separate theories. And this theory would incorporate and suggest that making sure that the managing class and all the people that are involved in the daily workings of the company are aligned in the well-being of the company. So it assumes and asks for the remuneration and the benefits received by all people that are being paid by the company via either salaries or otherwise due to bonuses and share schemes are clearly aligned with the value and the values of the company. So if the company is not working in a way that it's supposed to, it will negatively impact the stakeholders, obviously, but I think definitely the actual people that are being paid. So the attitude is to the betterment of the company, and one would hope then that it is set in such a way that the actions taken certainly by the directorship and the leading class, the leading layer of management, that they direct the company in a direction that is for the benefit of the company, but it goes all the way through to operations and production, that it deals with things down to not the low levels of productivity or theft, etc., where it discourages that, because when the company suffers, it leads to the detriment of all the parties, all the different classes of employees. So it's a theory that asks and relies on corporate governance being in place, and would suggest that if corporate governance is in a position to be well established, that the company should moderate itself, and the people that work within the company would be moderating themselves in a way that is in benefit of the company and the stakeholders. So in general, corporate governance principles include the following bullet-pointed points, and these would generally cover that the company operates in the most efficient and beneficent way for the stakeholders. So the corporate governance environment is set in place to minimize risk, to the extent that there's no wastefulness and there is no risk-taking which is not balanced or outside of a mandate of the company. What it's looking for is that it's looking for the strategic organizational direction to be followed without moving too far from that. And if the strategic objectives have been set in a risk-efficient way with clear growth paths and clear mandate as to the production, then the company should be operating in an environment that is going to lead to its longevity. What it also then starts to call from the actual people that are involved in the business is that you're talking about reduction of conflict of interest. You're asking for the disclosure, and you're asking for the clarity and for the ease of understanding of information. The reason for this is to preclude the hiding of or restriction of information, which leads to proper judgment and to proper decision-making by the stakeholders and other parties. The transparency of the information necessary to ensure that there are no aspects that are being dealt with out of the ordinary. What the governance principles also are more recently asking for is that there is an external attitude. So having people that are not involved in the daily running of the company, sitting outside of the organization, but having voice into the company, asking questions of the directorship, of the management level, to ensure that the actions of the company are within the best interests of all people. The nature of reporting, the quality of the reporting, etc., is highly important, and it also, the governance principles stimulate at all times integrity, honesty. This is the notion of introducing, for example, whistleblowing legislation, where if people are aware of other people within an organization acting without of the law or in a way which is damaging to the company, being able to report this activity and to have these actions adjusted. So the developments in corporate governance have been, in many cases, led because of the high-profile corporate scandals and losses, material losses of shareholder wealth. The notion that has been seen in many of those instances is that the behavior really has been through the personal application of the directorship and management class, in that it has been inappropriate, it has been self-serving, and it has been, in many instances, less than honest. And the complications and the losses that occur thereafter are very often due to personal interference in the company. So there's obviously always the case of certain bad decisions being made by a company, but that's part of business. So long as boards can be shown to be analyzing issues correctly, doing the research, and deciding on a path forward for a company, how the company's results come out at the end would be partly due to that, but partly also due to the general environment. It cannot always be 100% contained. But the internal attitudes of the people doing the implementation or looking for self-betterment rather than the betterment of the company, these are the issues that have led to a lot of the failures. And with increasing media scrutiny and more vocal shareholder groups because of the increase in information which is available, especially electronically, this is starting to force companies to act in a way that if there is behavior by the directorship or the managing agents of the company that is not appropriate, it is quickly weeded out and brought to attention. So I hope that this initial video has been helpful in just setting out the notion of what corporate governance is. The next video will take a look at how these corporate governance principles are implemented through, for example, boards of directors, etc. And we'll have a greater view of the corporate governance environment.